Welcome to iAMradio. I've done this presentation 2.5 times and the video didn't save. I don't know where it is. I'm gonna try a third time. I think it's important material. Hey David, hey guys. What I'm talking about today is how to process heavy things in your life and big events that suck. And I'm going to present a 3-bucket system to hopefully make living through and growing through those challenges more comfortable and have less cleanup after. Oh man, this must be the best time to do this because look at all these people. Hey. All right, so these would be events like loss, overwhelm, change. And as you can see, I'm not going to handle them in a very sad fashion. Does that mean I don't think you should feel sad when it happens? Fuck no. Feel what you feel. I'm just allowing for this is where I am. And also I've done this. So I'm going to let myself, I guess, stay with what's true to me right now. Oh my God, everybody. When I say I've done this, I mean that I've been through my share of shit. And as much as I would love to do more, I really wouldn't. And yet, if it happens, this is how I would handle it. So, I have 3 buckets here: feel, think, and do. When you're going through a challenging life event, there's likely a lot of this there, meaning a lot for you to feel, but you might not know how to do that. And you also might not want to do that. Feeling sucks, generally sucks, unless it's on the high side. But if you've got a lot of range, you can go really high, you can go really low. And feeling, and I still need somebody to fact check this for me, I do think it's processed in the same part of the brain that physical pain is handled. So you feel emotional pain. I know that I felt it in my heart. It really is like your heart is breaking. So let's say that you took in some information about a world event that was really upsetting to you. Maybe you lost a job or broke up with your partner or some other cataclysmic event. There's this, but it's probably easier to do this. In fact, it's probably so easy that you might not do this at all. And this will just build over the years and really keep this bucket active. It seems like if you have a full feel bucket from this event or other events, you'll do a fuck ton of thinking. I think it's Michael Singer, the author of Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment, that says the mind is where the soul goes to hide from the heart. And I think that's a simplification, but I'm also going to say, yeah. And that means that, okay, the people that are here now, some of you, you were there for the first one. I'm doing the same thing again because I lost it. Jess, I thought you might come, and I was like, I don't have any new illustrations for. I guess we'll see what happens. Anyhow, so you're going through some shit and you are likely avoiding feeling it. Maybe you're trying to, but don't know how. And I'm going to talk about that later. I did not have a healthy or really any relationship with my emotions. And I had no idea I wasn't feeling anything until I started to feel stuff. When you don't want to do this or it's too much, you might think that if you understand it, it will make it better. It doesn't. It generally doesn't. You might be able to wrestle the information that you have to a place where you can finally say, okay, I accept. But the information that you use to do that isn't all the information that there is. So let's say you have a loss. You look at all the facts that you have, the information that you have, and you think, okay, well, because of this and then that, then it's okay. I guess. And so then you start to accept it and allow yourself to move on. But then let's say more information comes along and shifts the pieces that you have on the table, and so the conclusion that you created is no longer valid. Does that mean that you no longer can accept what was? Understanding is a slippery little bitch. You only think you can get it. You can't. Understanding is an illusion, and it's predicated on different features of your human experience that you likely haven't questioned. Time, you as an individual, you as a human, and that it's even remotely possible to be able to understand causal event, like causal chains because of this. There's so much in play at any given moment. It could be as simple as like, well, maybe if they didn't turn right there or turn left there, but that is still downstream from maybe they were influenced to turn right earlier in the day. What they were influenced, like, it's all of these things come together and you really can't know. So when we're looking at processing like big shit in your life, I'd suggest, one, considering what I just said about if it's even possible to understand. Two, if you do and find what I did, accept that you can't. 3, let it go and just allow yourself time and space to do this. When, let's say that it's a sad event that you're working with, you might think you shouldn't feel happy in the throes of your grief. You will. You do. You won't, you likely will not have the same emotion all day. And God forbid you laugh at a cartoon or you think of something funny when you're sad about something you think you should be sad about. When you're sad, be sad. When you're not, don't. It's okay. So when I'm talking about this think bucket, thinking includes trying to understand so that you can accept it. It also includes, and this is a little bit trickier to follow, trying to figure out how to avoid pain in the future. Whatever feels you have unfelt, and you might, I had a bunch from my childhood, and I do believe, or it does seem possible, that we're all sort of connected to the larger bucket of all the feels that are, and so you might feel things that aren't directly tied to your personal experience this life, but they're there. And the more that you have here, the more you think here. And thinking is really, when you look at it, thinking in the future. So when I'm talking about thinking, I don't mean like contemplating lunch. I mean, although that could be, part of this, I mean more like thinking about the self, thinking about life, self-reflective type thinking. And there's some of that that's helpful, but there is a point of diminishing returns. And I could probably argue for like it's not helpful at all. You can bypass it if you want, but I'll say that for a different presentation. You're thinking, when you're thinking about the future, when you're worrying, when you're stressed, when you're trying to understand, when you're imagining what they might say or what you could say or what they said last time, you're usually doing that because there's something you're afraid of feeling. When we're thinking into the future, it's not really the thing that we're afraid of happening, the thing that we're worried about. I'm afraid I'll lose my job. Yeah, you're afraid of that. You're afraid of that because if that happens, then these things happen, and those things might make you feel some type of way. It's the feeling. And you could say, well, Shay, yeah, I feel pretty mad or sad. I can't pay my bills. Yeah, it's how you would feel about that experience. What's interesting about context is that it changes things. So kind of like I was saying about how understanding evolves with time and information, context that influences feelings when you're feeling because you think something makes the world of difference. So let's say in that example with the fear of a lost job, that actually the lost job then created space for you to pursue what you actually wanted to do in your heart. And so this thing that you're afraid of feeling, what if you knew, or this thing you're afraid of happening, what if you knew it was a very powerful and sure step towards your ultimate alignment? Would you still be afraid of it? And if you were, what were you afraid of feeling? Is it afraid that the people around you might not be able to understand, or they'll judge you, or when you can connect with the awareness of what you're afraid of feeling, then you can bring it to now. You can feel it now. You can empty that bucket. And that, I'm not even kidding you here. It really cuts this down. And then you can actually be present to enjoy what is, which is ironically what you're afraid of not being able to do later. So if you're just joining, what I'm talking about today is how to process life events that suck. And I have 3 buckets here, and this would be a way to break apart your experience. So there'll be things that you feel, things that you think, and things that you do. And they're kind of connected. What you feel influences how you think influences how you feel. Those inform what you do can, it's a feedback loop. There's a bunch of them in here. And this is the one where you make the most money. When you're doing this, you do these much better, more effectively. That's why I call it your free bucket. Because if you're willing and down to feel, then you're pretty much free to act and live. Hi, thank you. Nice to see you. Long time. The do bucket, because of the 2 presentations I did already, has this part colored in already. These little hard activity do's are the things that you need to do to keep yourself functioning during this time. If you've ever been in it, like really in it, you know that you really don't want to do shit. You don't even care. You don't care that you want to do shit. You don't want to do shit. Unfortunately, that can exasperate these and really dig a deep hole for you. So I suggest, if you're going through some life stuff that sucks, to allow yourself to sit down, set a timer, 15 minutes, that's all it takes, and write out like, okay, well, what are the responsibilities that I have to tend to every day? And then look at that same list and say like, no, but actually what has to be done? When you're processing a big life thing, it's really not the time to like write your book, unless that's how you're so inspired, or do anything that's extra. Kind of like bring the ship to the bare minimum operating procedure and allow yourself space to do shit. Feeling seems to have a big effect on the nervous system, at least for me. When I am processing things, I don't have the same energy. And when I don't have the same energy, rather than be mean to me about it, I lay down. And if I can't lay down, then I accept that my quality of operation is less than usual, and I do my best to adjust and let it be okay. There's no point in adding more to any of these buckets. You already got enough. Energy goes where the mind flows. Yes, I agree. With the do bucket, so this one can be helpful ultimately. So let's say that the event that you're processing is hurricane damage. You're likely going to feel sad, mad, all types of ways. You're going to think about what you could or should have done, or you would have until you saw this presentation. And then, if it's not helpful thinking, don't. I put the feel bucket out first because this is where you start. And if like as best you can, save all the thinking for later. If you want to keep a note in your phone and just say like, think about how I'm going to do this later, or think about how, like, keep a note, but don't go there with your head. When these buckets get turned like all mixed together, one of my clients called this swirl. She's like, I'm lost in swirl. I'm overwhelmed. Well, yeah, of course. Of course you would be. So give yourself like a structure or a system to allow for you to make space to be with the most important bucket that there is. I had a bunch of stuff like backed up to feel. I was really afraid to get in that bucket because what if I never got out again? What if I jumped in the bucket and that was the end of me? What if I never stood up again? What's so cool about this is like you do and you will. It's almost like, and I'm not just saying that from my personal experience. Yes, you are a unique pony and your process will be your own. I have worked with a bunch of people for a bunch of years and have done a lot of the things that I share here with them, and they similarly were afraid to get in their feel bucket. But it's kind of like a downpour. If you've ever been to Miami, it doesn't look like it's going to rain, and then it does, and it really does, and then it's done, and it looked like it never rained. So what I found with the feel bucket is it kind of is parsed out to you in amounts that you can handle. Your body system is so wise. I could go on and on about the wisdom of this and you as an individual expression, but that's not what we're talking about today. So what I'm saying though, with the feel bucket, your body knows. So if you allow yourself to sit down with your feeling, it moves, and then you can go to these other things. You won't have as much negative, fearful, or overwhelming thinking if you've been here first, which means you'll have clarity on what you need to do. So going back to the hurricane example, maybe you ultimately learned that it would have been beneficial to have some kind of insurance or this thing set up. Put those on your do list. Put them on your do list. And whenever you feel up to them, you can tend to them. This also, like I said, these buckets are all related. And so when you know that you're doing this one, it helps these. That's why I have this do your essentials portion colored out. So maybe to do this, like I said, you write out, okay, this is what I need to do to maintain a baseline with less cleanup. I can't tell you, like, I didn't get into this work. Let's say this work chose me, and I can't tell you how many times I had to put my life back together, and it's tiring, and you don't have to do it. One of my friends has similar awareness gifts, and he had the fortitude, the self-love, the programming to take care of those things during his storm. I didn't. And man, what a difference it makes. So now, like, as a conscious, intentional adult who has a relationship with their feel bucket, I know this is really important and I prioritize it. A lot of the people that I talk to or work with are similar to me. They're coming from home situations that weren't really supportive or healthy, higher on the chaotic side, higher on the hard side, and you likely weren't trained on how to manage things constructively. When things happen, if you've been conditioned in an environment like that, it usually feels like the end of the world. It really does. Imagine a breakup, thinking that you have to be with somebody for the rest of your life and you have a breakup and that there are no other people. That hurts. So the fall, when you're in your mind to the ground, is very high. So the mind has the ideas of how things should be. When they don't go as planned, the fall is much lower. If you're grounded and you have the awareness that sometimes people come together to grow, to experience each other, and then they move on and blah, 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 and it's okay, that breakup isn't as far of a fall. It's more of a step. Yes, there will be things to feel, but there isn't as much hurt because the fall isn't as far. And so what I was saying is, if you grew up in an environment like mine, you might not have been trained close to the ground. You might have been trained somewhere up here where the stakes were higher, where you were afraid of people's emotional responses, where you didn't have enough resources. And so the way that you process life might make it a little harder. I know, because I did. So today I shared, this must be like Instagram Monday, because I shared, or Content Monday, I wrote earlier today an article about programs. And it's interesting, like I have that little, is this helpful or not button after it. And I can see, like, I know all the people that are, like, I can't help it. 1, I'm intuitive. 2, I'm curious. 3, I love data. So I am aware of the people that interact with my stuff, and the people who that resonated with are the ones that have, from my vantage point, already gone through, like, whatever the dark nights are of the soul, whatever the like you poke your head through everything you thought you knew, and you're like, oh my God, no, it's not the same. So programming, there is kind of an identification with yourself that you maintain until you've had like your ass kicked or God called you. And God to me is consciousness, so not something outside of ourselves, but rather a component of like it's our consciousness, like our energetic body, it's like, it's a bunch of things. When I say God, I mean all that is, and I also mean you as all that is. So when I say God calls, it means like your heart's desire, the desire of your point of consciousness would be to evolve in that way. And so God presents this thing. So when I'm talking about the belief level, out of like how that creates programs that you operate through, it can be a little, at first it's like, If you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have been like, okay, but how do I make my glutes bigger? Life. But really, your problems and like problems are because of how you think, and thinking is such an illusion. It is such an illusion. And I say that because you can't. When you're thinking, like, here's my little card from my new deck that you can purchase at habitbook.com, Divination Over Time. Here's this card. As soon as I think about the card, I'm not with the card. I'm with an abstraction of the card. Is God all three buckets? In my world, God is everything. So it's all these buckets. It's the paper. It's the things you don't do. It's the things you think you should do better. It's like the people who suck. It's everything. There's nothing that's not God in my world. So in thinking, you have this, you're abstracting your experience. And what's real interesting and a real kicker is that when you think about areas where there are problems, there's a lot in the emotion bucket. There's a lot in the feel thing. And so you can see even less. When you think about people in your life, I call them character files. You're not with the person. In fact, you likely have never seen the person the whole way. You see through yourself to them, and what stands out to you isn't the person. It's a reflection of yourself. So it's very challenging to perceive accurately, and even more challenging to interact with those perceptions over time. And I wanted thinking to be the answer. I thought so much. I say I went the whole way crazy. And I did, I think. It's kind of like logic proves logic. Science proves science. There are these loops. And similarly, like your perception proves your perception. It's a hall of mirrors. There is no reality. It's real trippy. But that's how I get to say things like this, because I've been outside of that. That's, to me, when people talk about the matrix, it's the emotional thought matrix that constrains your natural behavior, because it gives you ideas about what things mean, which then translates to how they will feel. And so you're chasing these things to feel some type of way or to not feel some type of way, when all your feelings are inside. And like I was saying, they're contextual anyhow. You feel like they're relative. This little green rock, to me, this might be very special. I could feel super happy about this green rock. To you, it can make you really mad because it looks like, it's a nice color green, but you might not like this green because it looks like mashed peas. And so this rock could be really upsetting to you. It's the same fucking rock. If I have an experience with mashed peas later today that I too come not to like this rock, I won't like it. It's the same rock. The only thing that's changed is my ideas about it. And that's also a thing that plays a big role in how we interact with other people. It's crazy. It's so crazy when you really get out there and look at it. Okay, so let's say that you've bought into my spiel, and don't. I never want you to buy in to me. I only want you to buy into you. But let's say that you are curious about this and you're interested how you can interact with your feel bucket. Let me show you. So here is a person in a field, energetic field. Where this circle is, that's usually where their attention is and your attention is. It's with your thoughts. What does it mean if that's where your attention is? Attention with your thoughts. It means that that's what you're paying attention to right now. And I say this, I think, in almost every presentation. Are you feeling like your socks? Do you know what the fabric of your shirt feels like? How about the hair on the back of your head? Like, all of that's there. And when I call it to your mind, you can bring your awareness or your attention to those places and feel them. Similarly, when you're going through one of these things, so this is a presentation on how to process challenging life events that are yours or that you witness. When you'll likely be with the thinking, how could they, what should I have done, but what you need to be with iAMRadio, although there's value here, so like follow your own inclinations, is the feelings. And to do that, you take your awareness, your attention away from the thoughts, and you bring it to this. For some reason, I've been getting this feel to say 3 feet. So imagine that you're in a 3 feet circle of chalk, and try to listen to the air with your being. Sounds silly, but it's kind of like bring your awareness to your skin or to your organs or to your bones and try to feel what's in that tube around you. Almost like you were trying to listen to what was there. What does the, like, it's like, let's see if I can do this better. You get quiet and still, and you take your attention and you intend to connect with how you feel, and you ask questions like, how do I feel right now? And you take your awareness, your attention, the spotlight, and you just kind of like scan around. And it takes a little time to develop this practice, but eventually you'll be able to connect with an area that's there for you to feel. And you know when you find it, because you'll feel some type of way. And then the opportunity is to stay with that discomfort, and rather than think to how you're never going to feel that again or why you felt it this time, let you feel it. Feel it. Learning to feel fear instead of think about it was the best. One of the best things that's ever happened to me. You kind of like, you drop into your body, and this would be if you're not like standing in the middle of the road. So this would be if you're in a safe place and you know that there's actually nothing for you to be afraid of presently to your physical safety, and you allow yourself to feel the fear. I forget which iAMradio broadcast it was, but I talk a lot about how to do that to alleviate some anxious thinking and burn through the fear that you might have accumulated over time. But you do the same process here whenever you're processing, or same process to process a life event. You allow yourself to relax into the 3 feet around you. You pretend like there's nowhere else but right here. So when your mind starts to go to, lunch, or it starts to go to the event, or it starts to go, you bring yourself right here. I don't know enough about the science of nerve mechanics or neurology or whatever to talk about how this actually works, because I stopped looking at science and just started going towards what worked. And I don't know. It's not that science isn't helpful. It's just that I saw that my perception ultimately influenced how that worked. And it was actually, for me at this point, more helpful to be clear on what I wanted and why I was doing it than for me to be able to understand it. And allowing myself that freedom has helped me step into a lot of intuition. The mind says information comes from the outside. Fuck. Sometimes. But it can also come directly to you. There are things when you start to open these doors, and that's another beautiful part about having a relationship to your feel bucket. This is how you can have a conversation with anybody, people you've never met, and know if they're lying or not. When you are present to how you feel, there ain't shit you miss. And if you miss it, great, must be perfect. But in general, you're there for the information because you're not in your head. You're not with your abstractions of what's happening, not with your ideas. You're with what is. You're right here. If that's challenging for you, you might have some things to feel around guilt or shame, something that makes you feel that if you're here, you'll be seen. It seems like we develop practices of hiding ourselves, or rather, thinking we're hiding ourselves when we have guilt or shame in our feel bucket. So what if you messed up a bunch? Who cares if you were the worst guy on the bus? Here's now. Every time that you forgive yourself, you create space to own greater responsibility and demonstrate that you're human and you make mistakes, and it's okay, and it's important just to own them and grow, which lets everybody else around you do the same. Isn't that beautiful? And then, because you will make mistakes, whatever, or even do things intentionally, if you are accepting of that being a natural feature of your experience, you're more likely to live, to go for things and do things, because like, fuck, shit happens. You can hide out in your house all day, shit's still gonna happen. You can't run. So it does seem that the better your relationship with this bucket, the more comfortable you are and living forward, which again includes feeling things you probably wouldn't love to feel, but are ultimately helpful. Okay, so that concludes my presentation on how to process difficult life events or things that suck. I suggested creating 3 buckets to separate your personal experience. So generally when we're overwhelmed by life, all this starts to swirl together, and then it swirls faster, and then it swirls so much we check out. If you notice that's happening to you, you can create 3 buckets in your head or even on paper, maybe a note in your phone. And I suggest prioritizing space to do this. Does that mean you'll lay in bed for 8 weeks? Maybe, but likely not. It seems, like I said, there can be heavy downpours, and when you actually aren't wasting energy holding yourself apart from how you feel and you let it come through, it comes through and it goes, and you move on, and then it'll come through again like ice. From my vantage point, the bucket is very intelligent. It won't wipe you out. It'll come out in ways that you can manage it. The next bucket, the think bucket, this is the one people, self-included, ran to or run to try to make what happened be okay. Try to make it okay by understanding it, by putting it in a frame that makes it seem like it was part of this for that. I sincerely lived, if you look at my content before 2018 or 2017, I made it all okay for the growth of things, and then I saw that shit, you didn't need it. I didn't need it, or one doesn't need it for things to be good. That was just a story I told myself to make myself feel better. And if you are going to tell a story, because you can tell any story, I do suggest telling a story that empowers you. But again, there is really no correct story, or at least one that you'll be able to identify with your pretty little human head. The think bucket can also, you can get lost in here, and it's a little trickier because you might not notice that you're thinking to avoid feeling. It might sound like worries in the future, or imaginary conversations, or just rehearsing or reciting or analyzing or spin around facts you have, and those might be to prevent you from having a similar feeling in the future. So it might not be directly related. If you felt rejected from your parents earlier, you might think how to get people to like you and not connect that those are together. In my experience, I've been able to tap into the bucket of sludge that I had built up over time and just kind of empty it. And as I emptied it, my thinking got cleaner and better. And lo and behold, nobody's out to get me anymore. And like all of these things that I didn't know I didn't have to think, I don't think anymore, which allows my personal experience to be very pleasant most of the time. And then over here in the do bucket, these might be things that are inspired from the event. These might be ways that you could constructively protect, or no, let's say not protect, let's say constructively hedge against things in the future, or things you feel inspired to do. I used hurricane as an example. I also include this little bar of activities at the bottom of the do bucket that are your essential life events. When you're processing something that's big, it's real easy to like check out. At least it was for me, like check out. And I don't want to do shit, so I didn't. And then that felt like more things, like you just get further and further away from life. So I suggest sitting down, making a list and saying like, all right, these are the things I have to do every week. Put it on your fridge and like connect with the idea, or like draw the line the whole way from activity to the end point, that if you do those things, it'll make these things easier. I talked a bit about how an earlier chaotic environment can influence or disrupt this process, which is very grounded. It's basically saying like shit happens. It's life. And there is an element of control you can exert by being willing to work with it. And that control is acceptance. And it's saying that I can't control how things happen, but I can control how I interpret them and interact with them and respond to them. I do find that life is a reflection of your subconscious. And so there are things you can ultimately work out of your experience, or at least I've been able to. But in general, I think it's just helpful to allow that you're not going to be able to guard yourself against everything that is. And how exhausting, because you'd be so busy. So just accepting that sometimes life has hiccups, and that even like when I teach this to clients, I use different images for everybody, but sometimes I'll use one of those train tracks that they have at the mall during Christmas time. And it's like you start and you go the whole way around and you finish. When we're going through a problem or an obstacle, we tend to forget the loop goes the whole way around. So at the start, it's like, oh shit, this is happening. Oh my God, I'll never be okay. Oh, it's okay. And you go around on this loop where it's like, if you know that you're going to end up with things being fine, just you kind of like be present to the discomfort during the problem or the challenge. But you don't need to approach it like the world is ending. You generally can let it begin again if you wish. I talked about how to connect with your feel bucket and your feels, and so I am talking about how to do this in working with like events, challenging events, or life stuff. But you can also do this to connect with like your personal experience and, like I said, your intuition. Here is where it's at. And while we take in information with our ears and our eyes, that's not the only way it gets in here. And I talked, I think today in my story, about how we exist in this energetic field that's full of information. You can kind of feel harmonies and rhythms. There is more information available to you than you can think of, and you generally respond to it. And yet, because it's not in your awareness, you don't give yourself that credit. This practice would help pull you into your body in a way that you could harmonize or dance or work with, like what's around you right now. So to do that, you take your spotlight of awareness or attention, which is likely with your thoughts, and you might hear them or see them or feel them, and you take your thoughts, this energy, this spotlight, instead of asking like, what do I think about it? Ask, what do I feel about it? And you take the spotlight into your body And I suggested exploring the 3 foot radius around you and almost act as if you were listening to the room with your body, and you'll hit or connect with different things. And then the opportunity is to stay with the thing and breathe through it until it passes. So you might find I suggested doing this with fear. Our usual response to fear is like, let me think some more. Let me do something to distract myself. When you notice that you're having anxious thoughts, instead of being anxious about your anxiousness, see if you can pull yourself over somewhere quietly, put your hands on your body, and just allow yourself to feel the agitation in your nervous system. This has worked miracles for me. Like I said, I can't tell. I don't know if it's good for me to emphasize this or not. Fuck. I'm gonna do it. Okay. As an aside, it's beautiful. If you've been around for some time, I've been talking about this shit for 5 years at least. I've been working the non-physical mind component of life and change. Those things are like, they're all over Instagram now, where it's like, hey, that thing with your partner, it's because you're dad. Yeah, I've been saying it. And before me, people have been saying it. And like, now it's great. It's being said a lot of places. And because it's being said so many places, I don't have to worry about how I say it. I can just say it how I say it. And thank God. So with that, I was going to say, oh yeah. So I received or processed, came to this information directly. Yes, I've studied a bunch of people. I've studied a bunch of work. I work with people one-on-one. I have all these sources of information, and yet there has been something inside that's kind of led the evolution of my grasp on this material. I come to this nervous system thing. They say it in other places. People who actually are checking, who come at this from the science side, say the same shit. And that's why I don't feel like I need to know it. It's like, oh yeah, like we match. Not that it needs to match anyhow. But my main point in sharing all of that is like, do it how you do it. You might think you need to do something, but what if you just did it? What if you just did it? I can't remember where I was saying this, possibly here. The intelligence of your being is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. At a very simple level, think of all the things your body is doing right now. Like, look, I lift my hand. To do this, just lift my hand. All this work together. And not only that, I got food I'm digesting. I've got like blood I'm pumping, all this stuff that's happening. I have a cut on my foot that's healing. But this is doing it on itself, by itself. And when I work with clients, I lean on or invite in gene key and human design material, which helps a person like conceptualize their individuality, how they're different or unique. Your unique genius will unfold itself as far as I can tell. And your job is to allow your mind and your environment to support the plant that you're growing. Not the plant you think you should grow, not the plant they're growing, the plant that you're growing. So asking and tuning in to what's natural to you and letting that be right. What you can like, it's crazy. It is mind blowing how intelligent the human body is. Oh no, my audio's gone. Thank you so much for letting me know. How about now? Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me? I can't tell. Will someone weigh in? That concludes my presentation for today. If you liked iAMradio broadcast, please let me know. Thank you. And I have 20 or so broadcasts posted on IGTV, so that's a little triangle on my profile. And under the website, I also post them on youtube.com/The Shayley Show. And There's a bunch of other content there from over the years. Like I said, I've been talking to many of these same ideas in different ways for some time. I think what has mostly changed is my personal embodiment of what I perceive to be God, or like the allowing of that awareness. And I think that was more for me to do this work than anything else. That was what I needed. That was what I was looking for. I mentioned I got these cute little Play and Power tarot cards that I created and am preparing to sell. I'm making them a little bit different than regular tarot because I like to be different, and I think it's kind of cool to connect people with their process of growth. So kind of like I was saying with the train track, where it's like, oh, the world's ending, the world, okay, I'm fine. Like being able to see that in yourself makes it so much easier to live. And so my vision for these is to have an accompanying notebook where a person can use them over time and create some awareness of themselves in time, the way they uniquely function in time, so that they can support that process rather than be scared. For example, I had a client who had about a 2-week lead time between receiving an idea that she wanted to do and actually putting it into play. We discovered that, and so later, whenever she knew she wanted to do something, was really intent on it, and hadn't started, rather than like bitch herself out, she just accepted. She's like, oh, I'll start when I'm ready. And she did. So just being able to see yourself in that way. Some people require more rest. Some people have, there are all different types of people, all different types of ways, and it seems like awareness of that allows for you to support it rather than try to suppress it or change it. Think about how much energy you lose in trying to make you somebody you're not. So that's my vision for these cards. You can find them on my website, haveabook.com. They're called Divination Over Time Deck. And also excitingly, I started sales for an awarenting workshop. So the work I do with adults kind of funnels into like the point at the top is self-love. And self-love isn't, getting your hair did and your nails did. Self-love is being mindful of how you're handling the moment that you currently have. If you are rejecting of yourself or your circumstances, then you are putting a dark cloud over your moment, and you ain't loving it. And because the moment is all there is, you ain't loving yourself. So self-love is actually a practice, from my vantage point, a practice of mindfulness that allows for you to recognize the power that you have over your personal experience, which isn't in controlling what anybody else is doing. It's in leading your thoughts around the moment in a way that allows for you to not be resistant to it. And then not being resistant to that means not being resistant to your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, your relationship, blah, blah, blah. It seems like when you elevate that baseline, what you tolerate externally changes, and not only what you tolerate, but what you attract. And attract is a silly word because I think it simplifies it to things that you can think about, but it really does seem to be at an experiential level. So kind of like I was saying, consciousness is your consciousness is all you see. So when your insides are nice, from my vantage point, from what I've experienced, your outsides are nice. And when I've taken clients through their path and they've unfolded this part for themselves, shit just gets easier. Just gets easier. So the workshop, a parenting workshop, I teach parents how to accept themselves as the parent that they are, and different ways to harness their own mindfulness so that they can model it for their children and give them that same gift. Because parents are trying so hard to do the right thing, and there ain't no right thing. There's just the thing, and it's your relationship to the thing that changes how it's received and handled and all. Thank you guys. Love you. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you. And finally, I do work with people one-on-one. It's the coolest thing in the world to me. And If you are interested in this work, you can check out my website, happybook.com/transform. I list the services that I offer. I do feel that this is a gift that I have been given or get to have to share with the world, and I want everyone to have their gifts so they can do the same, which means if my price point is prohibitive to you, but you still want to do it, just talk to me and we'll see what we can create so that it's comfortable for you and works for me. I do only take on things that I have space for and resonance with, but I'm always open to the conversation, and I'll be honest with you about what works for me. So please don't feel uncomfortable advocating for what works for you. That's it for tonight. If you have any topics that you'd like me to talk to that haven't yet in iAMradio or anywhere else, do let me know. I'm also really interested in what formats work for you. It seems like the little info things that, it's like, here's your problem with this, and then like the breakout, those seem to be like trending. And I guess it's not that my objective is to one, it's to have fun, and then I guess to do what's natural to me, but all of that kind of mindful and in awareness of what my people need, people want. So what fits your life, what fits your head, what fits your flow, I really am interested. So please send me some messages. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. So lovely to see you. And I think Jess from Statement Piece asked a couple times about if these are originals. You know, girl.